Now, joining me from Canberra is Shadow Indigenous Minister Jacinta Nampijinpa Price. Jacinta, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Before we get to the voice, I know you've got a lot to say about that, I want to talk a bit about what I was just saying at the end there. The government is so focused on this voice to Parliament, it seems like it's all they've spoken about and pushed for the last year. But what about the cost of living? The government has been so focused on this, it's forgotten the majority of Australians, including Indigenous Australians, who are doing it tough. What do you say to that, Jacinta?
Oh, well, that's exactly right. I mean, this government has broken promises. At the election, they said that they would lower power prices for everyday Australians by $275. Well, they've done the absolute opposite. That they're supporting Australians with the cost of living. They've done the absolute opposite. Everyday Australians are really feeling the pinch right now, finding it difficult to pay their bills, to be able to put food on the table for their kids. And they put all their eggs in one basket in terms of this voice referendum. And I think it's actually backfiring on them, because everyday Australians are saying, well, hang on a tick. Why are you spending over $300 million on this referendum when you should be doing your job to make our lives easier and not rushing toward zero emissions, at the speed of light, while making sure that our power prices continue to increase, and everyone's suffering as a result. Everyday Australians, Indigenous Australians also are suffering, along with everyday other Australians.
And what I'm finding really interesting, though, on this voice and their campaign, and I'm sure you're finding this interesting too, is the language from the government now that the referendum is going to happen. They're not talking about the voice anymore. They're talking about recognition. Have a listen to what the Prime Minister posted on his Twitter yesterday.
Parliament has said yes to holding a referendum. Now the Australian people will have a chance to say yes to reconciliation and yes to constitutional recognition of First Nations people.
Recognition, reconciliation, who can be against that? But I feel like they're missing a key word here, Jacinta.
Oh, yeah, they've been harping on about the voice to Parliament for so long now, but they realise, the polls are telling them, the research is telling them, that Australians aren't in support of this detailless voice body, but that they do know that Australians would be able to support recognition. So that's why their tactics are changing in a really grasping at straws attempt to try to get scratch back support for the yes vote in this way. But Australians are proving that they're not silly, and they can see this sort of manipulative wordplay going on, and even more so. I mean, I'm getting incredible support from Australians around the country. I mean, generally, my Facebook is pretty steady, but I'm getting like 1,000 likes in every 24 hours of Australians because of the fact that I'm making sure that they're informed going toward this referendum, and they're wanting to be informed going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that I think, set so many Australians of very good will on edge here is that just the basic questions about this, they still keep saying, you don't need to know, or you'll find out later, or we'll deal with it down the track. And in question time, Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney repeatedly refused to define which areas of the government decision-making would be covered by the voice. Have a listen to this.
What areas of public policy will not be within the scope of the voice?
If she listened more carefully to the debate, she wouldn't have to answer that question. What I find absolutely appalling
the leader of the opposition
is that you
I mean, how can Australians be expected to just give a blank check to this when the minister in charge of it refuses petulantly to give them any detail?
That's exactly right. And when she refuses to give details, she then goes on the attack. And this is what Labor are doing. They go on the attack. It's name-calling. It happened on the floor of the Senate on Friday night when myself and Senator Michaelia Cash, from 6 p.m. till 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, 10 hours straight, we were asking questions on detail, and we were getting absolutely no detail whatsoever. And we were continually told it'll be up to the Parliament once the referendum has passed to determine what the voice is. So anything that they do speculate on now, you can forget about it, because ultimately those decisions aren't going to be made until after it has passed. And apparently we get to have a say as part of the Parliament on how it will actually function. But to be quite honest, I'm pretty sure they've got their plan. They're just not wanting to share it with the Australian people, because the Australian people aren't silly, and they would absolutely be voting no if they saw what their real plan was going forward.
And the polls already show that overall, I think we're at about 49%, and that's, you know, with a couple of both major pollsters from different organizations. What do you expect the government strategy is going to be around setting a date for this? They could do it in October. They could do it as late as December. If you were in their shoes, what would you do?
Well, I think that they are on shaky ground at the moment. You know, as you mentioned earlier, you know, they are threatening a double dissolution, the possibility of going early to an election. Which I think would be political suicide, but that's an option that they're considering at the moment. They don't, again, I think they're trying to find their feet in terms of strategy and providing a date for the Australian people. But they need to do that sooner rather than later, because it's a sense of limbo going on at the moment. And Australians are still calling out for detail, which they are not getting. But they're pulling out all the options by the looks of it in some sort of desperation.
Finally, one last question for you, just quickly. You're closely associated with the No campaign. We're going to see in coming weeks and months a huge full-court press from the Yes campaign. What can No supporters and people who are on the fence and thinking about No expect to see from that side of the campaign?
Oh, look, they're re-strategising the Yes campaign. Obviously, they're going to be shying away from using the voice word. They will be using as much emotional blackmail as possible in an attempt to convince people to vote yes. So I would encourage Australians to really understand, you know, get informed, absolutely get informed. Go to the Fair Australia website to find out exactly why we're saying no to this referendum going forward, and share that far and wide. Be informed before you cast your vote at the referendum. That's what I'll be asking Australians to do.
Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, thank you so much for your time and your words of wisdom. Really appreciate it.